All right, our second storyteller has a post-baccalaureate pre-med from Columbia University and is now a clinical coordinator for the Neuropathology Brain Bank at Mount Sinai. And she also loves riding her bike. Please welcome to the stage, Alessandra Cervera. Whoop, whoop. She's coming, keep it going. It's hard to maneuver.
For as long as I can remember, I have been seeking thrills. When I met Roxanne, I had butterflies in my tummy. She's a 1991 Cannondale road bike with a red enamel frame and a complete Shimano 600 drivetrain. And together, we were fast. There's no greater feeling than cycling at top speeds, running red lights, and narrowly avoiding pedestrians. In those moments, my heart would sink beyond the pit of my stomach, and fear consumed my body, and I loved it. Because in those moments, these ever-present racing thoughts in my head would disappear, and I relished in that silence. I often felt conflicted by my need to experience this adrenaline rush and my desire to become a physician. And even though I was slowly making my way through those prerequisites, I didn't actually think I was going to become a doctor. Chemistry, orgo, and physics are probably the most boring courses I've ever taken. And so I didn't have the motivation to excel. And I'm also the first person in my family to go to college, so without someone to provide that kind of direction, again, I lacked motivation. But out of a desire to provide neurological care to medically underserved communities, I carried on. As I completed my pre-medical post-baccalaureate program, I also worked full-time as a waitress. I volunteered in an emergency department, and I shadowed a urogynecologist in her OR. I would later accept a full-time position as the clinical coordinator for this brain donation program. And so I had all this amazing experience, but I still couldn't see myself occupying the same spaces as the physicians with whom I worked. My mother, a Mexican immigrant, had always told me that depression was just an excuse used by lazy people to get out of trying. Her exact words were actually, "La depresión es huevonada acumulada." And so I learned to internalize my pain to get out of the embarrassment of feeling like I wasn't trying hard enough to just be happy. But the breaking point came in 2019. I was 25 years old at the time, and I avoided taking the subway because every time that train would come screeching into the station, I had to fight these inner voices in my head that would tell me that life would just be better if I jumped in front of the Uptown one and died. And so for 10 years, I struggled with these kinds of thoughts. And I finally hit that breaking point, and I asked for help. I realized I don't have to silently suffer for the rest of my life. And despite what my family believed, this wasn't normal. I also had my own health insurance for the first time. And so when I got that diagnosis of major depressive disorder, it made sense. In fact, I felt less crazy than before because I felt seen and validated. But when the psychiatrist offered an additional diagnosis, I was intrigued. I soon found myself in this nondescript, plain office in White Plains, sitting on a too-stiff couch, regurgitating all of my childhood trauma to this stranger. This was a neuropsych evaluator. Afterwards, we would play some really childlike games. There were some bricks on a table, and he would tap them, and then I would tap them in the same order. There was a go, no-go task, and I had to click or avoid clicking every time something popped on the screen. And after about 10 hours of these assessments and interrogations that took place over the course of 2 days, I got this 12-page summary. And at the end of that summary, there was a diagnosis: attention deficit hyperactive disorder. When I received my ADHD diagnosis at 25, I felt like I finally understood all of my previous behaviors, but I also felt like I had further proof that I didn't belong in medicine. I don't know any doctors with ADHD, so I rode my bike like a maniac so I could feel excited about something. In May of 2022, I was late for my shift at the 4th Street Food Co-op. I'm often late, and there we were, me and Roxanne, flying down 2nd Avenue, skirting pedestrians, riding in vehicular traffic. And as we approached 12th Street, I saw this head bobbing up and down in between some parked cars, and it was almost like I knew exactly what was going to happen as I yelled, "Watch out!" My heart sank to that familiar pit as I watched this woman continue walking directly into the middle of the bike lane, just barely glancing up from her phone. I skirted the left crash right into the middle of an orange construction site barrier. And as I lay on the ground facing Tompkins Square bagels, I could taste gritty iron as the blood on my face mixed with asphalt remnants that were on my cheek. But I wasn't in pain. My mind had brought me somewhere else. And when the ambulance came, I was still wearing my helmet. Someone had locked Roxanne up to a pole for me. Thank you for that, whoever you are. And as I was getting strapped into the stretcher, I had this really strong urge to just close my eyes and drift off. I overheard the ambulance driver say we were going to Langone, and I started thinking about X-rays, CTs, maybe an MRI, what's my copay, do I have a deductible? And I said, no, please take me to Mount Sinai, Beth Israel. The American healthcare system is fucked up. But I digress. Okay. So now that I was back in the present moment, I really started to feel my body. And as the pain got worse, limb by limb, I sought refuge in that one frantic thought spiral that I used to hate. And I pictured my brain, a nice, firm flan, jiggling the blood vessels cutting into my sulci as the force of the crash rocked my head, and my neurons were filling up with tau protein aggregates, turning into neurofibrillary tangles. There were astrocytes spreading in increased numbers, like tiny little fireworks, reacting to this mechanical stress I had caused. And then we arrived. Despite my many scary-looking wounds, my only diagnosis was a concussion. And I wasn't able to take the MCAT the following week, as I had planned several months in advance. And I felt my career that I had just started slip away, and I frantically signed up to take the next MCAT a month later, determined to complete my application to med school that summer, but I was still concussed. So when I got my score another month later, I wasn't really surprised to find out that I had bombed the exam. I had to withdraw my application, and it was a difficult decision to make, because I knew I was going to have to wait a whole another year just to apply to med school, and then another year in that application cycle. But maybe that was okay. Maybe I just needed time to heal. After the accident, I didn't get on my bike for several months. I woke up way too early one morning to take the first train out of Grand Central up to Poughkeepsie. Initially, I wanted to do this 50-mile ride, but seeing as this was actually my first time on the bike since the accident, I settled for 35 miles. The 7:40 a.m. air was crisp, and the sun had just begun to peek out from behind its morning clouds. And there we were, me and Roxanne, becoming this one familiar, powerful machine. And as I pedaled, I realized I didn't feel the urge to ride recklessly. Having my ADHD diagnosis helped me understand the way in which my brain worked, and having finally found this career that was stimulating enough, I knew I belonged in medicine, but I knew I belonged in medicine. The path to becoming a physician is grueling, and by no means is it ADHD friendly. But I know that doctors with ADHD have to exist. The essence lies in finding alternative ways of doing the same things as our neurotypical colleagues, and knowing that was enough. The walkway over the Hudson is beautiful, and as Roxanne and I rode over it, there were these lush emerald trees, no skyscrapers in sight, and these tiny gusts of wind felt like freedom. I was scared. My body was confused, but I felt alive.